This season, Instacart has your back to school. As in, they've got your back to school lunch favorites, like snack packs and fresh fruit. And they've got your back to school supplies, like backpacks, binders, and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually tells you they have a huge school project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So first call your parents to say I'm sorry, and then download the Instacart app to get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get a $0 delivery fee for your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 per order. Additional terms apply.
Are you tired of doing the same workouts day in, day out? Well, check out the Peloton app. Wherever you are, whatever your mood, the Peloton app has something for you. Lunch hour power walk, park Pilates, beach yoga. The Peloton app has it all. Try it today. Download the Peloton app and get your first 30 days free. New paid memberships only, starting at $12.99 a month after trial unless canceled. Terms apply.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest will bring with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
February is Women in Horror Month, and in honor of that, we wanted to use this month to highlight women working in the horror industry, from directors to actors to writers. This week, our special guest is the multi-talented Brea Grant. She's an actress, a writer, director, producer, and podcaster, just to name a few. Genre fans will know her from her indie work to her roles on Heroes and Dexter. You can see her in Jeremy Gardner's upcoming romantic horror film After Midnight, which will be released on February 14th. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course.
One of the things that we always like to talk about is, do you remember what your first introduction to horror was, and were you a fan of it growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have that, like, teenage girl going to a slumber party thing where we would rent, scary movies and watch them, and we would sort of just raid we had a Blockbuster when I was older, but when I was a teenager, it was called 2-Day Video. So we'd go to the 2-Day Video and we would go to the horror section and just grab whatever. So I saw a lot of random horror movies that I don't super remember around that era. Right. And then I was a teenager in the 90s. So I got to have that wonderful 90s time of horror movies. So, saw Scream in the theater, 28 Days Later. I remember seeing that in my hometown movie theater. So all those movies would come and it was the greatest time to be a teenager as far as horror movies went.
Yeah, I'm with you there because I think we're the same age, and so I grew up in the 90s as well, so I'm very familiar with going out and grabbing a whole bunch of horror movies and then spending the weekend just binging on them. It was kind of a nice time in the 90s with that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it was just a time where what you did on a weekend was you went to the local video store and you were just what's here? And there's not that many new movies. So you would get you'd go through the entire horror section or the entire sci-fi section, which I did as well, and kind of just get all of those movies to watch at home.
Oh yeah. And you and even if the movie was bad, because you've rented it, you bought it, you're probably going to watch it to the very end.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Or you at least watch it for a while, and especially if you're at a slumber party or something, you have it on in the background.
Yeah. So have you always wanted to be involved in the film industry, or how did that bug kind of hit you?
No, I mean, let me think. Well, I guess for a minute I was in grad school and I was getting a degree in history, a master's degree in history.
Oh.
I have a master's degree in history, but I was really not enjoying it. And I was like 20, however old you're in grad school, 23 or something, and was like, I think I want to do something else with my life. And I did local theater when I was a kid in like the small town I grew up in. And so I was like, maybe I'll take an acting class. And that was what sort of was like, oh, I should try something else before I just do this, like academic thing. You know what I mean? Like it was like the academic thing, I mean, which is also super hard. And I just had the realization in grad school that I was like, everyone here is better at this than I am. So I'm going to go and pursue acting, which is also super hard, but at least, it'll be something I'm way more passionate about. So yeah, I moved to LA when I was like 24, 25 and started pursuing it then.
That's so funny
cool.
because I just finished my master's degree and thinking I was going to go into academia and noped the fuck out and was like, no, thank you. No academia for me. And now I work in social media for an animal shelter.
There you go. That's great.
I still write and do the podcast, obviously, but like I had the very similar realization where I was like, this is just not for me. I'm not cut out for this life.
It's a really, look, I work in the film industry, and it's and I'm like, but the most cutthroat place I've ever been was in the University of Texas American Studies grad student department.
Okay. Grad students don't fuck around though. Like grad students are vicious creatures and they are mean and they will tell you when they think you are stupid without hesitation. And it is terrifying.
Yeah. And I am not a person with like a great memory for things. Like there's so many things that I felt like I just like, there are people who just have these encyclopedic knowledge, have like this like, knowledge base they could pull from about like what they've read and the theories they know and stuff. And I was just like, oh, I'm so far behind. Like I'm never going to know all this stuff. I actually weirdly feel the same way about improv where I quit that very early. And it was like a totally great move for me.
Improv is so fucking hard.
Yeah.
So you have worn so many different hats in the film world. You've written, you've acted, you've produced, and you've directed. You've done so much. What's been your favorite role to play on set? For film?
It just depends on the project. I know that's like the lamest answer because I'm sure everyone's like it would be so much easier for you, everyone listening, my representation. Everyone would be so happy if I would just like pick something. But I guess the pretentious answer is that I'm just sort of an artist and like there's certain things I like to do on certain projects. There's definitely certain projects where I'm there. I'm like, yeah, I couldn't direct this or I couldn't act in that role. I'm much better, for the writing of this or the producing of this or like whatever. So it's like, I think in certain projects, it just, some things just make more sense for me to do than other things, if that makes more sense. And I'm always sort of trying to challenge myself. So I think one of the last things I started doing was directing, I guess, sort of. And that's like one of those things where like now I'm like, pushing myself to do more of that and different types of stuff of that. So I'm always like sort of pushing myself to attempt something different. And I think if I didn't, I would just get bored. I know it's so silly.
No, that makes sense though. I like that answer because I just feel like it's cool to see you branch out into so many different things. And now you do comic book writing. It's like you're an artist. Like you said, you're an artist and you like to try new things and put on different hats, to put it in like a silly metaphor. But yeah, I love
and it makes
that.
me
It's so cool.
so easy to work with too, because I'm just sort of like, I'm very like aware of all the positions now at this point. So I'm very patient with a lot of stuff. I mean, not always. But I, for the most part, I'm like, oh, I'm just like, it makes me more appreciative of everything that happens on set now that I've been in a lot of different roles.
Cool.
Speaking of your different roles, and this is mainly a horror podcast, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about Eastsiders, which just wrapped its 4th and final season.
It's true.
Oh, it's such a good show. I love that show. How did you get involved with it?
So it's on Netflix. Please go watch it.
It's so good.
It's an LGBTQ drama, so kind of strange because I do so much in the horror world, but I ended up on that show because I know Kit Williamson, who's the showrunner. This is the way all this shit works. But like he was like in my first movie that I directed, and he was like, I'm going to make this web series. And this was, I don't know, 1 million years ago, which is really only like 6 years ago. But and he was like, I'm gonna make this web series, and before everyone had a web series, but a lot of people did, whatever. And he was like, I have like a 1-day role where you can play it, and also can we shoot in your apartment? And I was like, of course, because why not? I would never do that now, but at the time I was living alone and didn't care, and So it started that way. And then season 2, he sort of wrote this huge storyline for my character. And then in season 3, I came on as a producer and helped make the show. I'm not in season 3. And then this last season, he approached me to be a producer again, and to play the role I had been playing, but also he had a writer's room for the first time. The first 3 seasons, I mean, this is just a lesson for anyone creating out there. The first 3 seasons he wrote all by himself, which is crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, and he directed all of them. And so I joined the writer's room, and with essentially the caveat of I really want to direct an episode. And so I'm the only person who's ever directed an episode that's not him. And so I did an episode this season as well.
You did. That's
amazing.
So good. It was a good episode.
It's a super fun show. And he has more stuff coming though. So it's like, we haven't seen all of his voice. His voice is going to be out there for a long time.
Yeah. What I loved about it is, cause I'm gay, and it approaches a queer life in such a genuine and realistic way that doesn't shy away from the messiness of it. Cause it's a messy thing sometimes.
Yeah, that was sort of his goal, which I really liked. It was one that he hadn't really seen. He felt like the gay at that time that you saw, or like the queerness you saw on television, was very like sort of like party West Hollywood world. And instead he was like this like, East Side hipster. And he was like, but what do our lives look like? So he kind of built that out. But then from the very beginning, he was like, he wanted to show what it looked like to be in an open relationship, or what it looked like when you got cheated on and things like that, which, got a mixture of responses. But I think it was very true to what he knew, and, dark in a great way,
Yeah.
And so kind of transitioning to like the other side of of your work, you have a new movie coming out on February 14th, Valentine's Day. Can you which is called After Midnight. Can you tell our listeners what the film is about?
Yeah, so it's Jeremy Gardner and Christian Stella are the directors who did The Battery, which I'm sure your listeners have seen. It's a great zombie movie if they haven't seen it. And I call this, I don't know what they're calling it, but I've been calling it a romantic monster movie.
Yes.
That seems right. That feels right.
Have you seen it?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
We both have. I sobbed.
Oh, great. Oh, yay. Yeah, it's weird because it's a monster movie that you're going to sob in.
Right.
I love it. I love that. I was like, this is my kind of thing. I love it so much.
Yeah, it's very much my thing, too. I'll tell you, when I read the script, I sobbed. And I was like, what do I have to do to be a part of this movie? And I was like so insistent on it. And they were not even sure they wanted me at that point. And
but you were like, but you do want me, please.
I fought. Trust me, I really fought for it. But yeah, it's great. It's basically Jeremy's character. It opens with him. His girlfriend, played by me, has left, and you don't really know why. You don't know what's going on. And then this monster keeps coming to his house after midnight every night and attacking his house. And that's sort of the premise, which sounds very simple, but it has a lot of like flashbacks and and then things go haywire,
Yeah, I saw this back when it I think when it premiered at Tribeca, and it was called Something Else.
Yes, I know.
And I'm glad that it had a title change, because this definitely is more evocative of the movie. But what I remember when I saw it, it really hit me how much, even though this is technically a Jeremy Gardner film, it's all about his character. Abby is basically the heart of this movie, and even though you're not in every scene, the character like lingers throughout the entire film. You can't not think about Abby even when she's not on screen.
Oh, that's really nice of you to say. I mean, yeah. Just regarding the title, Something Else was the hugest who's on first situation, where we were constantly like, I'm in this movie, Something Else. And people are like, what? Yeah, that was, I think that was a really deliberate effort of Jeremy and Christian in the way they shot it. All the scenes that like I'm in, it's mostly like, you don't see Jeremy that often in those scenes. Like if you watch it, it's a lot of me, him looking at me, like his point of view of me. So it's very much like his memory of the Abby character.
Right.
And they're so sweet. They always tell me I'm the heart of the movie. And like, you're an actor in these movies. And Jeremy and Christian are obviously like the the creative force of that movie, like in a huge way. But because they're so kind and they're so open, I did all their press with them, like at Tribeca, and they kept inviting me to like do stuff with them, which made me feel really great.
I was just gonna say, like, you also have such good chemistry with Jeremy. Like, this relationship felt so believable, and like the joy and the pain, just it cut me apart a little bit in a good way, because there's this particular scene, especially where you're like it's your birthday and you're receiving news about your friend who she's pregnant. But your face, like the way you use your face in that scene to go from like excitement to like sadness. Like I have been in that situation, especially as I'm getting older in my relationship and kind of like thinking about things like that. Like I started crying
Aww,
and I was
so
like,
sorry.
this is beautiful. I've never like seen it portrayed like this in such a beautiful, subtle way. Cause I feel like a lot of the time it's always played up in this like very dramatic, like, oh, she just wants a family and a baby. But this is much more like realistic. I don't know. It just felt so real and so touching and deep. I don't know. I
totally agree. When I
Sorry, I like totally just like rambled at you.
I agree. I'm a great actor. No, I think what I really like what drew me to the script was how like subtle it was. I mean, that's sort of they're like the kings of that, right? But
yeah,
and how realistic it was, because I think like you, like I am quickly approaching 40, and like these things that I never thought about like in my 20s about like marriage and kids are now like this huge thing in my life that I think about all the time for someone who like thought that she would never want that kind of stuff ever in my whole entire life. It was funny, like Jeremy, I think he was like, you know, does this read true? Like he like didn't want to put words like this is what women want. They want to get married, you know? And I was like, no, this is like a real part of life. And I think it's a very realistic thing to want to have like a long-term relationship with someone, and you know, for whatever reason you want it or whatever reason you want to get married. I just felt like I really related to the character in so many ways. You have no idea.
Well, and I also feel like people don't like, a lot of people are like, oh, women don't always just want kids. I'm like, that's true. But sometimes like our brains malfunction, and like for me, and it's just like all of a sudden you're thinking about it, even though you never thought you would. And you're like, my brain is betraying me. But like, it's a real thing that happens. Like, and it seems dishonest to not acknowledge that.
Exactly. And I think we do this dichotomy where we're like, either you're a really strong woman, you don't want to be married, you don't want to have kids, or you're a weak woman. And this is like what we do on screen, and you want kids and you want to be married. And I'm like, but maybe there's something in between, and that's okay.
There's like
also.
exactly. Like maybe you fluctuate between the two, and like that's just okay. Like that's totally fine.
And I just do find, I mean, just to get off on a tangent, but like if you do want that and you don't have like a strong partner and you don't have a strong base, everything else is going to be hard for you. So of course it's something you're going to ask for. You know what I mean? You're going to ask for the things that you want. And I think, isn't that what feminism has been trying to do for us, is that we can ask for the things that we want and not feel ashamed of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
And then Jeremy Garner, the thing that this is his third feature, and the thing that I really admire about him is being able to do so much with so little. What was it like working with him on this movie?
Great. He's awesome. I'm a big fan of The Battery, like I said. So
yes.
I already like had just a real artistic crush on these guys. And then I came in and they were super nice, and they're not the kind of guys to be like, here's a bunch of notes on every single thing. Like they kind of just let me be and do whatever I wanted to do. And Jeremy's like a theater guy, so everything about him is like, you know, he wants to work through it and do all the theater stuff. And like, all that stuff is really fun for me. And there is a scene in the movie, which I'm sure you know what I'm going to talk about. And it's this scene where it's like 12 minutes of us talking and it doesn't cut the whole time.
Yes.
And when he told me about that, I was like, I'm a movie actress. I don't do theater. I don't do live shit for a reason. And he's like, no, it's going to be great. And like, we had to shoot that thing many times for me to feel happy. But I was like so happy that we did it afterwards. But that's just like the kind of sort of artistic chances that I think they're willing to take in their stuff. Cause they're like, you know, fuck the system. We make small movies for a certain subsect of people. And like, they want to make what they want to make, which is rad.
And that turned out to be one of my favorite scenes of the movie. Was that because it felt so down to earth, so real, and then like transitioning from that to the ending, it just so fantastic. I don't even want to talk about the ending because I don't want to spoil it, but man, talk about amazing.
Yeah.
I have one last question. Is Pinot Noir a real thing, and what did it taste like?
No, it was just some random bottles of wine that they mocked up. But it is based on some true story of Jeremy's that he, like, all of the things were based on something that had happened to him. And I think there was a peanut wine of some sort that it was based on, but I have the prop bottle up in my room somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing. I just thought it was so funny. I was like, Pinot Noir, I want to know if this is real.
We should have made them for the release.
Really? So what's next for you? I think you have a couple movies that are in some form of being worked. Maybe coming out?
Yes, trying. Yeah, I'm in post on a couple things. I directed a movie last year that I wrote called 12 Hour Shift.
Okay,
It stars Angela Bettis.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. This is a horror podcast. Y'all know who that is. And David Arquette is in it and some other really amazing actors. And that is in post and we'll do festivals. And I wrote a movie that I starred in that Natasha Kermani directed. Natasha did Imitation Girl.
Yes.
That is for Dread, and it's like a slasher movie. And that one is also in post. So we're kind of at the like weird see us at festivals sometime this summer or fall situation.
Okay.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm so excited.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Hopefully some festivals. Yeah. Ones that people will go to, I'm sure, actually.
Cool.
Awesome.
So we can quickly talk about what we have been watching recently before we start talking about the movie you've brought.
The Bonkers movie.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Terry, what have you been watching?
So when this comes out, a review will be out. But right now, while we're recording, I've been watching Lock and Key, the Netflix adaptation of the Joe Hill comic series. Have you guys read it?
Yes.
No, I
have not. I love it.
Oh, I love it so much. And this is doing a really good job of adapting it. Like, I'm so happy to see them finally releasing it after there was like going to be a movie. It was going to be on Fox. It was going to be on Hulu. Like, this has had so many false starts, and I'm so excited that it finally landed at Netflix, and they're doing it justice. It feels kind of like a remix in some ways, because like the story is not being told in the same kind of order as the comic book, but it feels very true to it. It feels very true to the themes, and it's such a delight to see it come to life.
Cool. That's awesome.
That's been taking up my time. I'm about halfway through, and so far it's so good.
Cool.
That's like the maybe third time they've made it too, right?
Right. I know that haven't they shot like 2 pilots, one for Fox, and then I thought they did one for Hulu.
Maybe. I can't remember.
I thought it was for HBO, but maybe I just think everyone's on HBO. That might be part of it.
I'm very excited.
I just remember that, like, and that's gonna, well, by the time this is out, it will be out. But I really can't wait for people to be able to see it. But that's basically what I've been binging. What about you, Mary Beth?
I have had a pretty rough week at work. So I have been a little bit behind on my horror watching. I've been binge watching a makeup competition show, which is not horror related, called Glow Up, and it's amazing because I need to turn my brain off after work. So I have been a little bit behind on my viewing. I watched After Midnight, but we talked about that, and I'm in the middle of watching The Wave,
cool.
which is coming out on Friday with Justin Long. It's I love it so far. So I just have to finish the screener. Brea, what have you been watching?
I just finished The Watchmen.
Oh yeah.
Which I really liked. I'm sure you've talked about that. I haven't watched. Oh, well, the other thing I'm doing is I'm about to go. By the time this comes out, I will have already shot it, I guess. But I'm going to go be in this. There's a short film called The Stylist.
Oh yeah.
Yes, and she's making a feature, and I'm in it.
Yes.
So she's been giving me assignments, which I very much appreciate. It's my favorite thing to like get in a director's head. And so I just did a rewatch of Black Swan.
Oh, cool.
And I just watched Robert Altman's Three Women for the first time, which I had never seen, which is insane. Yeah. So I've been doing a bunch of research, stuff like that. And then I'm a big reader. I do a reading podcast, so I like read all the time and have to keep up with all of that. So I've been doing a lot of reading. Because it's been the holidays, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, I'm so excited for the stylist.
I am too.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be great. The script is really cool. I mean, by the time this comes out, we will know. But yeah, it's been the build up to it's been really fun.
Cool.
And so, because you'll be in Kansas City then for Panic Fest, right?
That's true.
Around that time, because I'll be there.
Oh yeah, and we're trying to go, but we're shooting right during it. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be the third time I've seen After Midnight, because I'm not going to miss it in the theater.
Okay. I like to come in. This is not giving away too much, but I like to come in at the very end and watch the audience reaction to the end.
Hell yeah.
Oh
That's my favorite. Like we stand in, Christian and Jeremy and Dave Lawson and I have stood in the doorway many times and like watched the audience reaction because it's very fun.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
Now that we've talked about what we've been watching now, let us go back to the past and talk about the film that you brought with you today. Brea, what film are we discussing?
We're discussing Return to Oz because you said a movie that scared me as a kid, and this movie is the scariest movie I could think of.
Yes, it scared me as a 26-year-old. So, so for those of you unfamiliar with the film, Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz has been saved from a psychiatric experiment by a mysterious girl and is somehow called back to Oz when a vain witch and the Gnome King destroy everything that make the magical land beautiful. What follows is a fever dream that ups the ante of anything in the original Wizard of Oz. So, what thing among the plethora of things scared you the most in this movie as a kid?
I'm gonna be real with you. I have a real issue with that description of the movie because, first of all, it doesn't feel like it's like they kind of talk about it because I'm so familiar with the original, which I also loved. It's not a sequel in any way. Like same characters, but different take on all of them.
Yeah.
Dorothy's younger, than she was in you. And then it's like she keeps talking about it. I mean, I think it's like a sequel to the book more than anything, or it's based on the sequels to the book. But if people haven't seen it, don't expect Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Instead, it's, horrifying woman who takes her own head off. It's horrible.
It's like a Mad Max post-apocalyptic version of the land of Oz. It's ridiculous.
Well, actually, it's truly post-apocalyptic, right? Because Oz has been destroyed. And there's all these. It's basically, similar to, I guess, the structure of the first one, where Dorothy goes from thing to thing to thing, and is traveling to this specific place. And during this one, she's trying to travel to find the Scarecrow and find the Gnome King and all that. But yeah, she just keeps discovering new people and new things along the way. But every person she discovers, I use that in quotes, is horrifying. Every single thing is horrifying. All of the bad guys are so scary. And I guess the main thing I could say scared me when I was a kid were the Wheelers, which were like the major bad guys of the movie. Or I guess they're not the major they're like the bad guy sidekicks. They're the equivalent of like the flying monkeys in the first one.
Right, exactly.
But they're worse because I texted Terry when I was watching it. I'm like, these things are the worst I've ever seen, because I've never seen this movie. So this was my first time watching it.
Wow.
I know. It was my first time watching it. It absolutely freaked me out. Like, I don't understand how any child, this was a Disney movie. Like, how could any child watch this movie and not have horrifying nightmares?
Well, this was that dark era of children's movies too, where we were just watching things that were so much scarier than what is available for children now, like this, Labyrinth, Dark Crystal. Like all of these movies are just really horrifying when you watch them now, even as adults, and you're like, how were these were the things that were available to kids? It's really strange.
Right. Well, and last week we talked to Chelsea Stardust about The Watcher in the Woods, which was another Disney movie. Yeah. And it's this period of time that is just like Disney just was going for the fucking freak factor. And they hired like directors that were known for other adult work. I mean, like this director, Walter Murch, he came from editing and sound design on like The Godfather, American Graffiti, Apocalypse Now.
And surprise, now he's making this movie.
Right.
Right. And so that he comes to this and like I'm like, wow. It's such a different Disney than the Disney that we see today. I can't imagine them releasing something like this that would be PG.
No, I mean, it's almost not because it's so scary. And there's literally a lady who walks around. She has like all like 30 something heads, and she like takes off her head and replaces it with another head. And that can't be PG, right? I mean, that's it's so scary.
No, that's horrifying.
Yeah. Very scary.
That's like what I remember from this movie as a kid. I remember the Wheelers. I remember particularly the one where it looks around the corner at them and it's just like the face mask.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that image was stuck in my head. And then so was the Princess Mombi, who had her, like you said, 30 heads in cabinets, and she just like keeps replacing them. And the part that like terrified me as a kid was when Dorothy's reaching for the powder of life, and then the eyes open and all of them start screaming her name.
Oh, so scary.
It's like, wow. Yeah.
It's so scary. Yeah. And rewatching it this time, so I watched it yesterday and was like, oh, wow, this is as scary as I remember. And there's all these things that are horrifying to me as an adult. Like, for example, her aunt and uncle are like, you keep remembering this crazy place called Oz. You know what we're going to do? We're going to take you to a place and get you shock therapy.
Like, that was the worst
we're horrible parents.
Like, the first, 30 minutes are just, Dorothy being told she's insane and, getting put into an institution, and people are screaming around her, and she's like, hey, are those people screaming? They're like, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Although I will say, bonus points to all those actors, because all the actors in the institution are later in Oz, and I didn't know that when I was a kid. Until I watched it this time, I was like, oh, the Gnome King is the main guy doing the electroshock therapy. Mombi is like his assistant who wears an insane dress in the insane asylum. She is wearing who wears that to work? That's in itself scary, that you would wear this Victorian era dress with I don't know, it's insane.
Yeah, she's like a scary nanny from a Victorian Gothic horror movie.
Yeah.
She does not look like she belongs there.
Yeah.
Well, and then I thought what was really impressive to me was the stop motion rock effect. That was really cool. I wasn't expecting to be so impressed by the visual effects in this movie, but damn if the Gnome King wasn't terrifying in the way they made him, and then at the very end when the minions come out of the rocks when they're running away.
Oh yeah.
Damn. Still free. It's that's intense.
Well, all of the special effects and the practical effects are just amazing. I actually looked up, so there's this character, if people haven't seen it, called TikTok, and he's one of the first things that Dorothy finds when Dorothy goes, and everyone's been turned to stone, and she's like, where did Oz go? This place that was so magical for me, and now here I am, a tiny girl looking around, and everyone's been turned to stone, and these men with wheels for hands are chasing me around in steampunk makeup, and and then she goes and she finds this essentially sort of a steampunk type robot, for lack of a better word. And I was looking up how they did it, and the practical effects of it are insane. The guy who did it had to be bent over at all times, bent in half, because he was in the costume, and then he controlled parts of it upside down, so he had to watch on this video thing upside down. It's crazy. You should go look it up. It's insane how they did that costume. Yeah, it's all practical. I mean, because it's,
Yeah, well, and the costuming especially is so impressive.
Yeah.
Also, something about it. So at the with the Scarecrow, I couldn't figure out why the Scarecrow on this was so much freakier to me, and then I realized the Scarecrow in the Wizard of Oz is obviously very obviously a person wearing makeup, and in this one it's a full on mask and costume, and I'm this is just too uncanny. I do not like this at all.
It's horrifying.
The costuming is so good, and Jack. The Pumpkinhead boy.
Horrifying.
I love him. I want him to be. He's both. He's my terrifying horror boyfriend. I love him, but also want him to get away from me.
Something horrifying to me watching this time around was he kept calling her mom, and I was like, oh god, Jack's mother issues. I'm sort of what is happening? And I actually looked that up too, because I was like, what is this deal? And it's this whole thing where what they reveal at the end, where this other little girl was created him and is his mother or whatever. But I was just this guy's mom issues I cannot handle. like in all that Dorothy's going through, and then all of a sudden she has this pumpkin calling her mom. Like, that's horrifying.
He's like, even though you're not, can I call you mom? And she's like, sure.
She's like, I guess so. And then
That's weird.
like the chicken, the animatronics in the chicken are amazing. But the chicken's voice is scary. Like, it's like a lady chicken voice that, like, I don't know. When she first started talking, I was like, this is scary. Like, watching it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole movie is a really frightening. Oh, and then the scariest part of the whole movie, if you, like, really want to come down to it, is at the end, at the very end, Dorothy is, like, you know, in Oz, and she's like, won and put Oz back together, and everyone's like, stay and be queen. Be queen. And they all start yelling for her to be queen and stay. And the whole time I was thinking, this is all happening in her head. Like,
right.
So, like, really, it's just like one woman's like journey on like a narcissistic crisis in her own head. Is that what we're really dealing with? Like, that's what Return to Oz's core is? It's horrifying.
That is
like,
awful. Don't think about it too hard, or you will be very upset with these childhood classic movies.
It's only a classic to us. I don't know if it's a classic to other people.
Fair.
What jumped out to me though at the very end, even when she's back in Kansas and she like sees the Ozma in the mirror, and she's like, oh, Auntie Em, see, it's real, and she's like, no, don't tell her. And so what is the moral that you're not supposed to like talk about your mental illness or about like the imaginary stuff that you have, because otherwise people are going to toss you in the insane asylum? Like, what is going on with this story? That kind of is
the lesson we learn, I guess, because when she talked about it openly, and they were like, you get electroshock therapy, which is really horrifyingly scary, and people are screaming the whole time, and I mean, there's a entire other scary movie, you know, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is all about that. And we treat that like a really scary thing. I just don't even know who was like, you know what, this is a good idea for children. This is like,
children need to be confronted with their imaginations and how fucking terrifying they are.
Yeah. Don't imagine too much. And if you do, just don't tell adults about it. 'Cause otherwise, we're going to all assume you're crazy. Yeah, and like all of the fact that the Gnome King at the end, this was something I started making notes at some point because I was like, the Gnome King's end goal, his end game, is he wants to eat them? Like, that's so scary.
Exactly. Is that it? Like,
his whole end game is he's like, I'm going to toy with them in this horrifying game of like, essentially what's like a children's version of Saw. Like, where it's like they have to like choose, find their friends among these ornaments, and if they get turned into an ornament if they choose wrong, and then the Gnome King's like, sorry, you guys all failed. I'm going to eat you now. It's like such a weird end game.
It's such a weird end game. Well, and so we had tweeted about this. Like, I had tweeted about it, Terry tweeted about it, and we got a lot of responses, just like brief ones about people saying how much it scared them as a kid. And it's like, you guys are not the only ones. Like, and a lot of people, like Brian Moda was saying, it's still creepy to him. And Mondo Vulgaire also says he credits this as one of the movies that got him into horror as a kid.
Oh, yeah, interesting.
Which I buy. I definitely buy. Did this get you into horror?
I mean, probably is sort of a gateway drug. I mean, like, like it's weird to think about because a lot of us who are like horror, into horror now, I feel like have these sort of like touchstones that we all agree on. Like my fiance owned this, you know, like he owned this. Okay. He owns Dark Crystal. I don't own DVDs, but I guess I do now because, you know, we're combining our assets. But
DVDs now.
Yeah, now I own DVDs. But like we own all of these, and we know all of these like old Disney movies, like Labyrinth or The Neverending Story. That's a really dark one too that I loved. Mm-hmm. But like all of these ones that we sort of look at as touchstones. So it must have influenced us all in some weird dark way where we're like, we can handle the dark shit because here it is. And we watched it as kids. I remember like staying up and like just being so scared those Wheelers were going to come in my bedroom at night. I don't know where I thought I was, but
they're just they're just terrifying, and they don't move like a normal thing should. It's just everything about them is like designed to be unsettling. And then the way they threaten people is by talking about, I'm going to rip you apart and tear you into tiny pieces. I'm like, this is not for kids.
Yeah. And they have like almost weird clown makeup, so they're bordering on that clown scariness, you know? And they wear these crazy clothes.
Yeah, it's like a mix of like whimsical and then utter horror.
Yeah, because they laugh real crazy. Like they laugh like crazy, like you know, like really almost like witch-like in some ways.
Yeah.
Well, and this movie just sort of antes up everything that terrified people about the original Wizard of Oz. Like, I have some friends that don't watch horror movies, and they talk about how much Wizard of Oz scared them. And I'm like, okay, well, have you seen this movie where instead of flying monkeys, you have these Mad Max style wheelers, or the Scarecrow? Well, the Scarecrow. This is even more weirder. But how about a Pumpkin Man head who keeps calling Dorothy his mom? Yeah. But then there's the one creature we haven't talked about, and that is Gump.
Oh yeah, great.
The Frankenstein creature put together from plants and sofas and a mounted head.
Yeah.
Like,
and then you sprinkle the powder of life on him, and he's like I like him because he's real like resigned to his position in life. Like he's like, well, I guess I'm a flying couch now, and then he just flies them wherever they need to go, and he seems real happy about it. For the most part, doesn't even care if he's a couch or just a head on a wall. Doesn't seem to give a shit.
He's just like, yeah, whatever, just take me around. It's cool. Like at the very end when they just like have him on like a pole.
Yes.
I was like, oh, okay, I guess he's just like a canon character now that everyone just carries around.
Fine.
Well, they like pull his head off of his body as the king is eating his body.
Yeah, that's right. They just pulled it off so the king wouldn't eat him. But I guess with the powder of life, I mean, I don't know what the like ground rules are for the powder of life, but I guess
what's the logistics?
You don't feel pain of other parts of your body once it's been disconnected from your head, because he seemed fine once his body got eaten. I don't know.
So ridiculous.
Wow. What a ridiculous film. I'm so glad I finally got to watch it. And was like, again, this podcast continues to give me reasons to watch films I like know I should see, but have never really like tried to seek out. So now I've seen it, and now I can never watch it, and now I will never watch it again.
I mean, on the positive side, as a kid, I really wanted a lunch pail tree.
Oh yeah, I know, that's some real fun stuff. Oh, and we haven't even mentioned the fact that there's a desert there that when you go into it, you turn completely into sand. And where was that in the first Oz movie? That wasn't there. And all of a sudden they're like, yeah, this desert, this is like just a part of Oz, Deadly Desert. We all know it. We all are familiar with the Deadly Desert.
And like the mountains, she's like, oh yeah, these are the mountains. I'm like, what the fuck? Because I have never read the books. I'm like, Dorothy, how the fuck did you know about the mountains? Like you were only in the Emerald City and on the Yellow Brick Road. Like, how do you know all this?
Right, I know. And they at some point even allude, they're like, oh, this is where I landed last time. And I'm like, that's not where you landed. It's such a weird like. And as a kid, it really bothered me that it wasn't a direct sequel. Like I could not handle that, because I was just like, but nobody looks the same. Like, she's not wearing the same clothes. Like, everything really bothered me about that, but I really loved this movie.
I also was really bothered that Toto was a different breed of dog. Wrong breed. And also that Toto was not a bigger part of the movie, because Toto is the best. I played Toto in my kindergarten play. I have a deep connection with Toto.
You've really done all your character work on Toto, and you're like, no,
I've really gotten into his character and like really embodied his motivations.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I should say like anybody listening is going to be yelling at the podcast, and they're like, it's based on the books, not on the movie. And like, we get it, we know, but it's still weird. It's like weird.
It's still
weird.
Well, and then I was actually, as soon as it was done, I leaned over to my boyfriend and said, was L. Frank Baum, is that his name? Was he the guy who wrote the books? Is he okay? And my boyfriend just went, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Well, and the original covers of the books are so creepy too. I remember I had them as a kid, and those gave me nightmares more than anything else, like the creepy covers and like the illustrations.
As I remember, the creepy covers of the books, I may be wrong, did sort of look like the Scarecrow in this movie. Right?
Yeah, so I think like this movie emulated like the illustration style more closely, which is scary.
Piggybacking off of that, I was shocked when Dorothy is just so randomly talking about the Tin Man who had an enchanted axe and cut off all of his limbs.
Oh, right? Isn't that that's like a little like, wait, what? What did he do? Like, which is from the books also, right? But
it is in the books, yeah. And I was like, I don't remember this in the Wizard, because I've never read the books. And I was like, I don't remember this in Wizard of Oz. And I did some looking, and that is what happened in the book. But I'm like, holy shit.
It is that crazy thing too of like, I guess in that moment I was like, I guess I understand why the parents are here taking her to do something. Because if she's talking about someone in her dreams cutting off his limbs, like that's really normal.
Jesus.
Like that's a little scary as a parent, right?
Yeah, that would definitely be worrisome. But the cast too. We haven't even talked about the fact that this is is it Fairuza?
Oh, Fairuza Balk, yeah.
Yeah, her first role, her first like feature film.
Oh, is it? I didn't know for sure, but she's incredible.
She had like 2 TV. She really is.
She is incredible.
It's like such a dark and a kind of complicated role for an actor, like a young actor, and you're watching it like, wow, she's really like pulling this off, and you see all of her thought process, and like, I really thought it worked.
Especially because almost the entire movie, she's interacting with like either people in costume or you can't. It's like, she's almost like not interacting with people.
Oh, right.
And so it is really amazing to see her interact with all of those characters and really like you said, it's a really strong performance from her especially for a young person to really interact with TikTok and Jack and the chicken and Gump. And it was so impressive.
Yeah, you're right. There's probably only like 10% of the movie is she acting with people.
Yep.
Everyone else is like, oh, this is your animatronic chicken that you carry around the entire movie. Like, enjoy.
Yep. Sounds about right.
Which is,
Sounds good.
as an actor, it's hard to act across from nobody. And I can't even imagine doing it as a kid. That would be so crazy.
Just as a testament to her skills as an actor.
Yeah.
And then Piper Laurie plays Auntie M, Carrie's mom herself.
Yeah. I mean, she's great. All the actors are really good. And like I said, the bad guys are all amazing because I never realized it was the same people playing all of those first roles that you see. And then all of a sudden, here they are as like, even the Wheelers. They're all the same guys in the institution. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, I didn't either until I looked at it this time because I was like, where are these Wheelers now? Because there's one in particular with like big eyebrows that I really could draw from memory, he's really like ingrained in my head. And I was like, is that guy around? Like, could I hire him? Like, is he still acting? Because he's obviously very scary to me. I don't remember what I discovered, but but call me if you're still around. Lane Wheeler.
Man, oh man. Wow. So thank you, Brea, for joining us to talk about Return to Oz. This movie was a trip, and I am so glad we were able to revisit it. Where can our listeners find you, and what do you have coming up?
Oh, well, they can find me every week on my podcast, which is called Reading Glasses, if you like to read. That's, And also on Instagram and Twitter. I'm not on Facebook, but Instagram and Twitter as Brea Grant. And, you can look for After Midnight coming on February 14th, Valentine's Day. It's playing in some theaters, but then you can also buy it online. It really helps us if you buy it online or if you just add it to your watch list on Amazon, like things like that. Just really help the movie to get out there.
Please do that, everybody.
And it comes with the Scarred Podcast seal of approval. It's so good.
Thank you very much.
So listeners, you've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What was your experience with Return to Oz growing up? You can send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can tag us on Twitter @scarredpodcast, and we might feature you in a future episode. You can also reach out to both of us on Twitter. I'm at MB McAndrews.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful.
And like I said, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe.
Thank you to Steve Barnold for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our theme song. Thank you to everyone for listening, and stay creepy.
And until next time.
Won't somebody please think of the
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.